What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the collaboration album between Nas and Damian Marley. Basically, this project is called Distant Relatives, and it came out in the spring of 2010. The thing about this particular album is it was kind of a stopgap for Nas and Damian Marley, as they had both not put out albums as oftenly. It's kind of the concept. I mean, Nas was doing his albums every other year, so this is kind of like the stopgap for him as far as that kind of went. But Damian Marley had not been around since 2005 with, well, Damian Marley had not been around since 2005 with Welcome to Jamrock, which I reviewed way back in 2015, so you can check out that review. But it's kind of the concept about this. It's kind of a hit album here, I'd have to say. It's got some good. This is kind of a hit album here. It's got some good stuff on here, but it's kind of a world album, I'd have to say. It's more reggaeton. This album is more of like a dance hall and reggaeton type fusion of rap music as far as that kind of happens. So this is not like a typical kind of East Coast sounding kind of Nas album, and it's a little bit more kind of rap oriented than typical kind of Damian Marley as far as that kind of happens. So some good stuff here to kind of get this fusion as to how that kind of happens, but it does have like a pretty overlaying kind of world theme as far as like some worldly kind of topics and just overall more almost philanthropic type stuff as far as that kind of goes. It's definitely more food with the message, album with the message as far as that kind of happens. I mean, they do have some bops on here, but even so, it's kind of got some lyrical jabs as far as that kind of happens. Just some lyrical type stuff as far as that kind of goes. Just some good stuff to kind of get. So it's typical of Nas fashion. And it's also typical of like the introspective kind of weed smoking type stuff of Damian Marley as far as that kind of goes. So it's just some good stuff to kind of get that in that particular pitch. But this is definitely kind of a summary album. It's typical kind of Jamaican and dancehall type fare as far as that kind of goes. It's a lot of good world music. It's probably one of the more notable, I would say this is probably one of the more notable world and dancehall type albums I can think of from the early 2010s as far as I kind of have. So some good stuff to kind of get that. But we'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. So there are about three of them, kind of give or take. It's just kind of here and there, just because this is kind of a patchy album as far as I kind of went. But it did have some degree of promotion, but just not exorbitant amounts, I'd have to say. There's approximately like three or four singles just here and there, I'd have to say. One was only released in Europe. One was just kind of a music video and stuff like that. So we'll just get to some of them. You'll see what I'm talking about. But there was at least one official single, and that was As We Enter. There was at least one official single, and that was As We Enter, and this came out in the winter of 2010. So this is a pretty good bop here. This is kind of an electro dance hall hopper, I'd have to say, for getting crunk. Definitely, this is kind of an exotic warm weather heater for some outings, I'd have to say. Just an overall good kind of gem. It doesn't really have verse structural as far as that kind of happens. It's just kind of back and forth between Nas and Damian Marley as far as that kind of happens. Just some good stuff to kind of get that, I'd have to say. But it's just a good electro kind of dance hall type song that really works pretty well. It's just a good Liddy type one. Definitely pretty contemporary. Just a good one for stepping out as far as that kind of goes. Just in a more worldly sense, I'd have to say. Just kind of more typical. It's kind of more atypical for places other than like head shops and folks like that to kind of play reggaeton music out in nightclubs, especially around certain parts of the United States as far as that kind of happens. But if you do find some nightclubs that do play some, if you do find some nightclubs that play like some dancehall type music, this is a good bop to kind of have some of that type fashion as far as that kind of goes. It's a real kind of contemporary type one as far as that kind of goes. Definitely a good contemporary song from Nas and Damian Marley as far as that kind of happens. Just some good gems to kind of have them on, as they're both kind of more outlandish and just more offhanded as far as that kind of goes, but some good stuff. The second single, the second pseudo single is kind of Strong Will Continue, which is kind of an almost song for me. I kind of halfway like this song, kind of on the fence about it, but this is basically like a twinkling kind of struggle and bustle tune, I'd have to say. It's some evening blaze for like some blue collar fare, definitely. It's just kind of a hustle tune, just in a more reggaeton type sense, is what I'd have to say. Just kind of bucking adversity and stuff like that, just bucking the system and just kind of going with it and getting the stuff done as far as that needs to be, getting tasks done as far as that kind of happens. I mean, I like this song in some sort of a motivational kind of pep, but it's just kind of a little bit overbearing as far as that kind of happens. Just kind of one I was more on the fence about. Just kind of felt like a more vanilla factory type bustle type tune, something that just didn't really have. I kind of, I feel like the concept of the adversity compared to some of the stuff, this was not quite as ambient as quite the approach to executing as to how to talk about bucking the system. I just felt like it was just a little bit kind of steadfast and just more kind of just like it just didn't really have as much juice and bite behind it as far as I kind of went. It just kind of felt like a kind of standard kind of song for the Strong Will Continue as far as I kind of went. But that's just kind of constant. I mean, it is lyrical, does have some good bustle about it, but just this more standard as far as that kind of happens. So I mean, it does have some lyrical tones on this particular song. It's a good concept as far as that kind of happens, but it's just kind of a standard in approach as to how like the message of the song kind of went, so as far as that kind of happens. But the third single, My Generation, was kind of only released in Europe. Didn't really appreciate this one that much. This is kind of another vanilla and kind of factory type cranked out, kind of overcome struggle type song as far as I kind of have. It's just another song with a message. Didn't really enjoy this one that much. Just really didn't like the production. Just really didn't like the production at all in this particular one. It does have Lil Wayne on there, and folk. The song does have Lil Wayne and Joss Stone on there, but it just didn't really help the song that much or at all. So I'd have to say it's just kind of a poor one as far as that kind of went. Bad choice for a single, I'd have to say. And then the fourth single, which is kind of one that just had a music video for it. I don't know how far it was promoted as a single, but it's not main. Definitely like this one. This one's just kind of a janky, kind of distorted head shop type vibes that it kind of has. This really has that kind of head shop type feel overall as far as that kind of went. And it's just some summer haze and daily living kind of accessory, I'd have to say. Definitely good stuff for like daily kind of contemporary day-to-day type life as far as that kind of goes in like the summertime, just in a more head shop and just places like that type feel as far as that kind of goes. And it's just a this is kind of a solid kind of mid. This is kind of like a mid club hit. I'd have to say decent little club bop as far as that kind of goes. Just mid energy, just kind of mid feeling as far as that kind of happens. So this works as far as that kind of goes. This really, and this feels almost like sardonic in its like approach in terms of the production as far as that kind of goes. It's kind of a janky type tune that's very distorted. Just a good song to smoke to, but it's just kind of an offhanded one as far as that kind of happens. Just some summer haze, just stuff like that, but it is good for some standard day type fare and regular day to day type stuff as far as that kind of goes. That's kind of the concept about the singles. So to talk about the rest of the songs in this album, there's 13 songs on here, and out of those 13 songs, I wound up recommending to you 7.5. So I'll go ahead and recommend those 7.5 songs. They would be Leaders, As We Enter, Nah Mean, Patience, Land of Promise, Tribes at War, Friends, and the almost song is Strong Will Continue. So I already talked about Strong Will Continue. Some of these other highlights on here, I kind of feel like Leaders is a real good highlight. This is probably one of the best songs in the album. This is the song I remember from back in the day when I used to listen to this album. This is really like a dreary kind of summer haze, I would have to say. Just an excellent Bob Marley like hook on here. Definitely reminds me of Bob Marley just completely with the hook on here. Just a real excellent type one of the best on the album, I'd have to say. This is just a late day kind of smoke one cut, definitely. It's just kind of a flourish in the heat kind of song, I'd feel like. So this is definitely good for some summer heat as far as that kind of goes. Just some good malaise kind of having that sort of sense. Just another kind of standard one, just a vanilla type feel for some summer living as far as that kind of goes. But it's just an overall nice one. Definitely should take you back to the 70s with Bob Marley and that type of stuff. And Damian Marley does a pretty good job with this one. Nas does a good job with the lyrics and that type of stuff. So it's just some good stuff here. Another reggaeton type one that's kind of in the realm of Leaders, not quite as good, but in the relative realm of it is Land of Promise. This is definitely like a dreary kind of wake and bake haze, I'd have to say. It's a good one for that. Some wake and bake, definitely some wake and bake type sessions, I'd have to say. Just a typical, this one's just a typical kind of reggaeton type fare, I'd have to say. Just a good summer blaze and vibe overall, I'd have to say. So it's just a nice one. Really kind of takes it back to like 70s reggae and stuff like that. Just Bob Marley type feels in terms of that summery type haze. So I'd say this is a good, nice one. Patience is a pretty good highlight. This is the most popular song according to Spotify. It has about 60 million plays on there. It's a pretty good concept. Definitely like the hook on this particular one. This is just a captivating kind of breezy hook that this song particularly has. This real good sample or whatever that is on there. Just works extremely well. It's just kind of a blissful, exhilarating nightclub blaze of a song, I'd have to say. It's just a quick times. This one's definitely good for some quick times, quick living as far as that kind of goes. And this is just a zone out kind of bop, I'd have to say. It's just a good song to smoke to and just zone out and just kind of relax a bit and just kick back in the club, marinate in the club. It's just a good song to marinate in the club and kick back, have some R&R as far as that kind of have. It's just a great zone out song as far as that kind of goes. Definitely good for some quick living. Patience is a pretty excellent song, just like I was saying. So it's just a good concept to kind of have. Definitely kind of surprise hit on here as far as that kind of goes. And then kind of a real tribal song just by the title, but also just tribal song in general is Tribes at War. This is definitely kind of a wilderness-like festivity song, I'd have to say. It's just a good smoke. This song is just a good smoke session blazer, I'd have to say, and it's just a good reggae night venue bop, I'd have to say. So it's another one to kind of have for like a night venue if it plays reggae music. As far as Tribes at War is another good night venue bop to play if they play reggaeton music, something like that. Just a good one to overall kind of have some good stuff on here, good composition of lyrics, and as far as that kind of goes, just a good one. The cat Non is on here. Don't really know him that well, but it's a good guest verse on here to kind of have as far as that kind of goes. And then Friends is another highlighted one. This is kind of a malaise, kind of evening heat of a song, I'd have to say. This is definitely a good smoke a sweet type tune for winding down, definitely. It's just this song is definitely some reggae makeshift for some after hours, I'd have to say. So this is kind of one, kind of similar to Land of Promise, but just a little bit more malaise about it. This is definitely like some good day after hours, I would have to say. Just a good concept to kind of have for like the makeshift, whether you're in Jamaica or just anywhere, just in like the summer haze, summer heat, as far as that kind of happens. It's great for like, the song is just great for like July, August, just 4:30, 5:30 p.m., winding down, getting ready to go home, smoke a sweet, something like that. Just a good tune to kind of have in that sort of sense, I'd have to say. Leaders is a good one for that. Land of Promise, Friends is definitely the most malaise one. This is the most makeshift kind of one to kind of have in that sort of sense. But it's just a good one to kind of have. This a different kind of pitch. There's a lot of good smoking tunes on here, but there's also like some songs with message. There's a lot of good smoking songs on this particular album, but there's also some songs with a message and just overall overlaying lyrics as far as they're gonna have. So it's just kind of some food for thought, just to be able to wake and bake and just stuff like that, just evening malaise, just stuff like that, just winding down or just either way, morning, evening, just that sort of stuff. There's even a few nightclub type songs on here like Nah Mean and Tribes at War and some of those type ones, and As We Enter and some of those type ones. So some good stuff. But to talk about some of the songs, I didn't recommend. So some of these, the songs towards the end, like My Generation, Africa, most. Some of the songs towards the end, like My Generation, Africa, Must Wake Up, are just kind of more homely type songs that just have a more stronger message that just doesn't always connect. I just kind of feel like it's good that they have the message, but these just have poor productions on there that just don't really add up to much in terms of a compelling listen. It's the same thing with In His Own Words. It's another poor one. Despair was kind of a choppy type song. I didn't really like the beat composition of that one, just the arrangement of how that one kind of went. And then I felt like Count Your Blessings was just kind of trying to be another peppy type one, kind of like Strong Will Continue. That I just didn't like the kind of vanilla and kind of phoned in kind of message of that particular song. So it's kind of the concept about this. That's another thing about Strong Will Continue is it just kind of felt phoned in. So that's kind of the concept. So me basically recommending 7.5 songs out of 13 on here. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 6.75. I think that's about as much as I can do with it. It's got some good gems on here, but sometimes this message is a little bit but sometimes I feel like the message of the album kind of overlays the actual concept of the quality and the recreational value of it, where I just feel like they had a lot more to say, more so than the value of just presenting it in like a fashion where it's a little bit more recreational, just kind of more of a jive and a bop as far as I can have. So it's kind of the concept. There's just some poor ones on here, some poor productions. Probably needed a few more Liddy songs, something like that, just some stuff like that. Maybe a few rappers on here would have helped also, just some worldly type rappers. Just I can't really think of some reggae rappers, but just something like that. I mean, I guess Lil Wayne was on here, but it was pretty much on one of the worst songs on the album. I'd have to say was this kind of the concept. But the social score, I'm going to go ahead and give the social score like a 6.25 out of 10 because I do feel like there's some gems on here, but it's just kind of here and there. I kind of feel like the kind of worldly kind of message. I feel like the food for thought and songs with the message type tone just kind of is not quite as contemporary as like what probably would be necessary. I'd have to say there's just not a ton of songs that have like that social. There's just not a ton of social songs on here that have that sort of pitch as far as that kind of happens, as far as trying to have some outing songs to kind of have with your buddies and that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. So it gets to 6.25. In terms of the future, like Nas has put out albums. He's put out a number of albums with Hit Boy and stuff like that recently, and Damian Marley, from what I can remember, he last dropped an album in 2017. It's not every day that Damian Marley drops an album, so that's kind of the thing about it. But this is solid enough of an album here, I'd have to say. It's just got some worldly type songs, definitely some good smokage songs and stuff like that, I'd have to say. But it's just kind of here and there. It's kind of somewhat of a patchy album, but it does deliver on a good amount of fronts. But it's just kind of, that's just the thing about it. So yeah.